Hey, I'm Dean and this is Legacy Voyage. In Season 1, I'm documenting my journey to earning my first 100K net worth as a full-time college student. Join me as I share some of the lessons I learned along the way.
Oh my goodness. It has been so long, dude. I feel definitely more than a month. It has only been more than a month since I've recorded my last podcast. And it really just flies by, man. Because one week, like, I'm a little too busy, and the next week I'm traveling, and the next week I'm still kind of traveling, and the next week, like, I'm so busy. It just gets getting pushed back further and further. But now I'm about to go on an hour walk back home and finally getting this pod in. But where do I begin, dude? Probably with the offer. I recorded a clip of kind of how I was feeling during that time, like going throughout where I got the offer and then kind of negotiated with them, but like told them I'm on it and then told them, wait a minute, I changed my mind. But it was kind of all over the place. Let me play the clip and then I'll explain what happened. I can't lie. I haven't been this lost in a long time. I'm recording this coming from work, and man, a lot has gone down that just confuses everything. Yeah, I'm very lost. Okay, here's the rundown. So, talked with the founder and CEO, and we came to an agreement. Or, like, basically, he heard me out, I heard him out, and we agreed on letting me work during school. So, I would finish up school, but at the prorated salary. It'd basically be the same thing as if I was getting paid the salary wage, because I didn't care too much about the equity, because that can like kick in after I get back in person. But that was that was like the biggest agreement that he was super flexible on, that like I was super happy with. I was like, okay, perfect. Like, sent me the offer letters to sign, and I was like, okay, why not? I'll just sign this. And then after I signed it, I was like, I sent a quick note to one of the YC companies, or actually the only company that I interviewed with. And it was a YC startup. And I was like, hey, like, sorry, I just got an offer the other day and I signed it today. So, like, won't be able to move forward with this interview process. He immediately hits me back with oh, congrats. Are you 100% sure? Like, are you 100% sure you want to stay with Leland? Because the whole interview process was supposed to be initial, like, first round interview, just a basic, like, get to know you call, which is what I did with him. And then I moved on to the second round, which was supposed to be a like customer mock interview call where he would be one of the customers and then I would impersonate him and like be the founder trying to sell the product. And then the third round was a call with his co-founder. And the fourth round was the work trial, which originally was supposed to be 2 weeks from now, like early September, because that's what worked. I was like, okay, yeah, like that works for me, because at the time I didn't have an offer. So I tell the other startup, I'm like, hey, won't be able to move forward with this process. And then he hits me back with okay, how about we move your schedule forward? Let's do the work trial next week. And I was like, what the heck? Because he was super bullish on me. Because we had a great combo. We really did. And I think like that's what he was super happy about, which is, yeah. So there was that. And then I hopped on a call with him today and he was just explaining, like, basically he really, really wanted to put me on that work trial, which would be for next week. And then right after the call, I went and talked with the founder and I was like, hey, bro, it was like the most awkward thing too. Cause like they brought like a ice cream cake. Actually, I got the ice cream cake today and we brought it in because it was a big celebration. And as everyone was like around and celebrating everything, the founder looked at me and was like, hey, do you want to announce it? I was like, actually, can we talk? And then we like go into a room to talk about everything. And I just tell him the whole story because I'm trying to be super transparent. Like, I'm not trying to be shady, even though I'll admit, like, it is a little bit, I don't know. I feel like it's fine because I started the interview process before I got the offer. So it's like, I wasn't actively shopping around. But I told him the situation. I was like, so basically, is there any way we could like push off the decision date to after the work trial? And then he was like, no, we're going to have a hard day end of this week. So that is where I'm at right now. Like, I'm very, very lost, trying to figure out what to do. So I'm going to give it some time, try to talk to some people, get some advice. But honestly, man, like, maybe I'm just overcomplicating it. Because my gut feeling is to just stay with Leland. Because I've already been here for 5 months. They're willing to pay me prorated salary while I'm finishing school, which is a big dub. The team is great. The stage of the company is amazing. Like, high growth, we're killing metrics. So maybe I'm just overcomplicating it, and we should just stay with Leland, because freak. Because the other thing in the back of my mind that I'm trying to think of is like, what is reversible? What is irreversible? And I think if I forego the work trial, like, honestly, think about it now, like, it's super low commitment. Like, it's chill if I don't do the work trial. But man, okay. Uh, yeah, I'm very confused. I think one thing that would make it a lot easier is if they like agreed to give me a bigger salary. Yeah, like for the longest time, I've always told myself, like, I don't really care about the money. Like, I'm trying to maximize my learning. Ah, freak. Yeah, because in the long run, like, what's 15K gonna be to me? Like, come on now. Because I was wondering if maybe I should ask the founder, like, hey, would you be willing to bump my salary when I come back in person? Which honestly makes sense. But the other thing is, I don't want to be like nickel and diming them, because, like, freak. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Yeah. I'm coming home early from work today. It's like 7 right now. I usually come back at like 8 or 9 because I want to go for a run and really try to think this thing through. Yeah, maybe I'm just overcomplicating it and it's like not that deep and I could just stay with Leland. It's like whatever. Yeah, because another possibility is I just like, yeah, commit to Leland. But even then, like, the work trial does sound kind of fun. Like locking in, we'd work 12-hour days. Yeah, I think I would learn more if I stay at Leland. Just by virtue of everyone is, yeah, I think that's the move. Because if I go to the other startup, it's super, super early stage. And I've already experienced the early stage life of like trying to build 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is hard, bro. It's so, so difficult. But the nice thing about Leland is that there's like already systems in place. There's super smart, cracked people here that I can learn from. But I think the move is, man, I'm about to chat with the co-founder of that other startup. Maybe tell him I can or can't. Ah, freak. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll play by ear, man. By the end of this week, hopefully I have things figured out, because freak, I'm kind of lost right now. I might go to an event in SF. Maybe I'll ask the founder if adjusting my salary is on the table, if that's a possibility. Because I think like a nice, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just lost. Especially because I'm new to all this. Like, I've never had an offer before. I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know how to negotiate offers. Like, dang. Yeah. Well, that's my predicament right now. I honestly think the safest move, actually, for sure, the safest move is just like stay with Leland, finish school, no biggie. But yeah, maybe tomorrow I'll have more answers. But right now, definitely still lost. Awesome. So now coming back after that clip, a lot had happened after that. So basically, I went to SF and then worked a little bit more. And then I ended up in Korea visiting some friends. So let me play that clip now. 안녕하세요. That means hello in Korean. Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I am in Korea right now. Little Asia trip before I lock in. But a lot has happened, so let's give a little rundown. The biggest thing that happened, and honestly the biggest news, is that man, I don't have the exact days anymore, but I think it was on a Tuesday where I got called in to Leland by like the founder. I was very, very lost. Because I was extremely, extremely lost. And I'm talking about like, when I say lost, I mean like the same level of lostness that I was when I was like trying to figure out my life, like figure out whether I believe in God or not, and basically all that stuff. I was that lost. And so it was the same situation here where I was like so very, very, very confused. Because to paint the picture, big news, I got the Leland offer. So that was really awesome and that was great. But I also had this other YC startup that I was interviewing for, and I let them know, I was like, oh yeah, so Leland gave me this offer and I'm planning to like take it. And so they immediately hit me back and they're like, are you 100% sure? Like, are you sure you want to do that? And so I had to make a choice. Was I going to stay with Leland and they had like a 75K salary, or go with the YC startup and have like this potential 150, it was 120 minimum, and I had to choose between the two options. That's actually kind of interesting because I reread one of the papers that really like changed my life called Will to Believe by William James. And it kind of proposes, I'm just thinking about that now. It kind of proposes something similar to this situation where we should consider a couple things when we're making these tough choices. I won't get into that for now, but I'll explain my thought process and the factors that I was thinking through as I was making this decision. And there were kind of four factors. There were probably more, but these four were the ones that were probably like top of mind in terms of what I was thinking about. And then of course there's like the risk and reward trade-off, but the four factors were this: learning, what can I learn the most from, or where can I learn the most? Luck, where can I maximize my surface area for luck? 3 was leverage, what can I leverage more in the future? And then 4 is legacy, like what makes a better story. And so those were the four main things I was thinking about. And of course, I think in past episodes, I always kept hitting on learning and luck, but not so much on the leverage and legacy part. So I'll kind of tell those as well. But for Leland, here's what I was thinking. First of all, learning. Already been interning there for, bro, I think it's been 4 or 5 months. And I've learned so much in that time, just about like so many different things, because I can get my hands dirty with so many different things because it's a startup. And that's one of the awesome things about startups. And then on top of that, there's so many people that I can learn from. And so that was honestly a big factor into making my decision, is that there's like so many mentors that I can have. And of course, the hands-on startup experience. For the YC startup, it was kind of the same situation. Like it's a startup, so I'd be able to get my hand dirty. And because it's so early stage, I'd be really going from that 0 to 1 stage again. It's kind of how I was with like We Are Nesian and that whole journey. It would be kind of like that, but except this one will be more legit for sure. Well, the downside to this part is that it would only be the founders and then me. So there wasn't really anyone that I could learn from. I would basically be like the head guy after the founders, of course, which I didn't really want to this early on in my career because I want people that I can learn from. The second factor, luck. Honestly, for Leland, this is probably like the worst thing about it. Especially because in my head, I'm thinking luck is like SF in New York. Like that is where luck happens, just because so much is going on over there. What I will give to Leland is because it's in like Salt Lake, I think it at least has that going for it, or it's not a tech hub, but it's a growing hub. And so it's worth something, but definitely not as much as the YC startup where it's in SF, so it's like super high luck. The third thing, leverage. I would say both of them is pretty high, honestly. But I think Leland probably beats it out because it's this rocket ship, Series A startup. They're about to raise the B. And plus, I wouldn't have to drop out. Like, I could finish off school, which is another big factor into my consideration for the offer. And then the YC startup, I'd have to drop out. And I might get some good startup insurance, but it's also like, because it's so early stage, the risk is a lot higher for it to go bust, though. Whereas Leland, it's already Series A, it has some traction. I wouldn't say it hit product market fit, or at least not like very strong product market fit, but it's on its way there. And then finally, the fourth thing is legacy. This is just like what tells a better story. And both of them, I would say, is pretty good. Because if I join Leland, then I can tell the story of like, oh, I turned down this opportunity at a fat salary at this YC startup to get this like 75K salary, which is pretty good for Lehigh. Like it's not bad at all, but it's not as high as it would have been if I went ahead with the YC startup. And it's the same kind of story, like dropping out for a YC startup, being employee number 1, and if it grows, then that's like an incredible story that I could tell. But honestly, with everything factored in mind, the risk to reward ratio, like at the end of the day, I could always come back to that YC startup. But for this Leland opportunity, I think it really just took the cake, especially because I could finish up school while I'm working. And so that is probably the biggest update this whole episode, is the fact that I am committing to Leland. And it was a wild, wild ride. I'll say that for sure, bro. Because, well, at least for that like day or two, I was so lost. We're glad I got everything figured out and I'm locked in. And now I'm committing to Leland, and we finna run it right after this Korea Hong Kong trip. Yeah, it's kind of like a bad luck because after I got the offer and accepted it, I just feel like missing a bunch of days. But when I get back, we're locking in. That's for sure. So that's kind of like the story for this episode. And I actually have a story at the end about like being a student and raising my hand and stuff, but I'll tell that later. Anyways, moving on to doubles of the week. These are 2 dubs and 2 L's since the last episode. So the first dub, of course, I just explained it. Locked in the LELAND offer, taking that, and we're gonna run with it. And then the second dub is I was able to visit my sister for her birthday. And it was kind of cool because the whole family pulled up. I was originally not planning to go because I didn't want to miss those days. But I was like, dude, might as well. Like, I can work remotely. That's one of the nice things about white collar jobs. I can work remotely. So I just worked remote from Vegas and we all pulled up and surprised her. So that was a big dub. And then L's, honestly, the biggest L is that I just haven't been locked in on my health. And when I say locked in, I mean like I just really have not been exercising. Like my diet has been pretty good actually. I'd say actually it's been like really good. I must say, especially compared to like what it's been in the past. So I guess it's kind of a new problem-ish because I really haven't had the issue of not working out. Like I've always worked out and exercise, but I just been so caught up with like wheeling stuff that I just get so like distracted, not distracted, but so locked in and focused on that I just don't exercise. And then the second L is that I've kind of stopped documenting the journey. Like I keep up with these podcasts, of course, but I'm talking about like the vlogging, which I want to get back into, and I'm doing it this trip, and then also like LinkedIn posts and stuff. So I'm gonna lock back in on that and try to get like some type of schedule down for LinkedIn posts. Oh, whoa, wait, my bus is here. Okay. Yeah, I will get back to this later, but I gotta catch my bus. At the end of the clip, I had to catch my bus, so I was running to try to get there. But hopefully that's helpful, kind of caught up to speed. Basically, I'll do like a huge overview of what happened since the last episode. Let's rewind a little bit. Let me just start from the top. Okay, so first of all, the LELAND offer. Okay, we had that season of learning instead of season of earning. Then doubles of the week, 2 dubs. So the first dub, of course, is locking in the LELAND offer. And then the second dub is really just making tons of memories. Tons and tons of memories. So yeah, I had a couple trips all in a row within the span of like 2-3 weeks. So the first trip was out to Vegas for my sister's birthday. And then I came back and then I went out to SF for this event. That was an interesting event, super interesting because like originally, and even right now, like I'm just in shock at how much opportunity is out there in SF. Not, I think opportunity is the right word, just how much like energy is out there in SF. Because there's so much opportunity for luck and just like meeting so many people, which is why I really wanted to move out there, like go to all these events and meet up with people. But I went out for this specific event, and honestly, it did not live up to the hype that I had in my head because this event was meant to be like only crack people allowed, right? Like there's a couple filters that you have to go through in order to come to this event. And honestly, like I would say, yes, there were like a good amount of crack people, but there are also like a good amount of clout chasers. And those are the people who really like bring down the caliber, the clout chasers who really just want to like name drop all these people. That was the other thing. I was like, I was having these conversations and they were authentic and real. And then all of a sudden there was like this clout chasing competition and people were like trying to see how many names they could name drop. Like it was just so unnecessary. And so that was the other thing that I didn't really like about it. And so one thing I'm thinking about is like, especially locking in on Leland and living out here in Utah is like, yeah, maybe I'll go visit every now and then for things that I actually want to go to. So that was what I was thinking about. And then after that trip, I went out to Korea, Kong. Those were super interesting. Korea, that was really cool because honestly, for both of them, I was visiting friends from school. And so obviously there's like, they're all cracked. But in Korea, I was out there and one of the things we did, which is so different than what I've done in the past, is we actually spent a couple hours like locked in working, which honestly I've never done on vacation. like truly locking in and working with friends. Like that's something I've never done. And I actually really enjoyed it because at least for me in vacation, like I remember one time I went to Tonga and I thought I'd really enjoy it, which I did. But after like 2 weeks, it just got so boring, man. It was so boring. And so that's one thing that I will probably keep on doing is like working on vacation, at least finding pockets to really lock in because I genuinely enjoy building stuff. And so that was pretty cool. And then Hong Kong, as always, it's a good vibe. I think what's super interesting this specific trip is like it was weird because for my friend, she had like this family reunion type thing. And so a lot of her extended family came, which is actually a lot more than I expected. But specifically, there were like three kids, probably like one toddler baby like couldn't speak at all, and then one like baby who was maybe like one, and then a kid who was like 4 years old. But it was so interesting because my friend and her friend, so there was like two who were about my same age. They were like, "Oh my goodness, there's so many babies, like so many kids," and it's so funny because like in Utah, it's such a normal thing. Like even me growing up, I'm surrounded by so many kids, and so that was something that just like went over my head because that's like very normal in Chinese culture from what I understand, or the Hong Kong culture is like they just don't have many kids. And so that part was interesting. And so came back from that, and keep in mind that was I was probably out there for like a week. And throughout that time, like I was super jet lagged, but kind of got normal by the end of it. And then finally, I come back to Utah, and immediately we have our offsite. So I'm already super jet lagged like crazy. I barely got any sleep on the plane. And I come back to Utah, and then the very next day, we start heading out for the offsite, which honestly I was like really, really looking forward to. That's one of the reasons why I like cut my trip short was for this offsite and coming back to it. So we go to this offsite, and I'm like super, super sleep deprived. I'm already like feeling kind of sick. So the entire trip, my throat was super sore, so I could barely even talk. And I was like, yeah, like I honestly probably shouldn't have gone. And even now, like a couple weeks after the fact, everyone's catching a cold. It was probably me. I can't lie, bro. I got everyone sick. Anyways, I'm just gonna go to Chicago and let them deal with it. Sorry, guys. But the offsite was really, really cool. One really, man, there's so many key takeaways from it. First of all, it was really cool to see the stage of the company and how we're trying to go and really think through things and the overall vision for Leland, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to join at this stage, is just to see how we're thinking about like growing the company. So I thought that was really cool. And then the other thing, or one of the big highlights for me, was the growth team meeting. Because in that meeting, it was really the first time where I fully clocked it and realized how cracked the growth team really is. Everyone was going through their metrics and their channel and what they were owning. So it was really awesome to see there how everyone is thinking through growing their channel. And when I said everyone was cracked, it was kind of like the running joke in the offsite because like my manager was like, "Oh, like Dean called me cracked." He's like, he called the whole growth team cracked. And the reason I say this is because on the way back coming from the offsite, I caught a ride with the CEO, the founder, and we stopped by a place for lunch. And so we kind of get to talking, and he asked me, he's like, "Oh, where are you from? How many siblings you have?" Like no normal small talk. And he asked me, he's like, "Are your siblings cracked?" And my answer was like, "No, they're not." And it's really no fault of theirs because I think really just growing up Polynesian, Pacific Islander, you don't know the opportunities that are out there. There was no one who looked like me that I knew of who was going into banking or starting their own business or all these different things that I had no idea even existed or was a possibility. But the only way I really opened my eyes was because I just so happened to go to the school in Vegas, which just so happened to do this caddy program, which I just so happened to go through and just so happened to get this scholarship to a super good school at Northwestern, which allowed me to open my eyes, which is like, first of all, yes, I worked hard, I put in a ton of effort, but also was super, super lucky. Like just the fact that I was able to go through that whole thing, I think was super lucky. And that's one of the reasons why I think like I am ambitious. Like even in high school, I don't think I was that ambitious or driven, but it was just a virtue of like having my eyes open and seeing what's possible. And I was like, actually, I kind of want to do that. And this idea of like opening people's eyes is kind of what I want to do for more Polynesians, more Pacific Islanders, but especially my family. And one of probably the highlight of my entire summer out there in Utah, maybe the Leland offer would be first, but this is up there in terms of definitely top 3 from the entire summer, was bringing my sister into this world of tech and business. Because while I was out there, actually my last week while I was out there, we hosted this growth team dinner because one of the people who's on the growth team, who's usually working in London, actually came over for a couple months, and she's working in Utah. And so I was like, oh yeah, like, why don't we bring the whole team together and people can bring their families? And so that's exactly what we did. I was like, oh, I'll bring my sister. After the dinner, we were talking and debriefing and talking about, I was like, oh, dude, why don't we just like record this? So I pulled out the mics, recorded the interview because I wanted to capture like this very crucial moment, because I think she is at this very interesting stage, very similar to I think how I was freshman year before I like really opened my eyes, where like now she's hopping on LinkedIn and doing all these things. But I'll cut to that interview. The beginning portion was kind of lost in there, but there's a good amount in there.
I was saying that I don't want to glaze my brother because I know where we come from. You know, we grew up together. That's just not, we don't do that in poly families. But he like invited me to his circle of people that were established and people that have come from, you know, working at all these big companies and turning offers down, whatever. And so there's that part of like me being intimidated, but him being younger than me, seeing that this is a reality that this is something that I don't need to be afraid of. Like, I don't need to be afraid of stepping into circles that I'm unknown or that are unknown for me. Because that's something that I was like really scared about coming to this dinner, because looking at these profiles, their profiles are very different from mine. Like 20 experiences on top of whatever little experience I have in my little elementary school. And so I was just really scared that I didn't have the expertise and I wouldn't be able to talk the way that you need to talk if you are in the business world. But they don't care. Like, they really were just having normal everyday people conversations, and their similarities are that they are familiar with consulting and they know how to strategize, and like that was really cool for me to see, and like made it not so scary, like, because I was trying to memorize these profiles and like trying to say the right things, but they didn't care. Like, they just, and literally, like, the girl that I was sitting next to, honestly, I was super intimidated by her because she just, well, first of all, she's gorgeous. And then second of all, like, she has all this education and all these experiences, and she like speaks so poised, but literally she just genuinely is interested in people and like asked me what I'm up to. And I'm like, oh, I work in an elementary school. And she's like, oh, that's interesting. Like they actually care and like care where you're headed. And so I'm grateful, honestly, that I was able to see something that I don't normally step into, like, and being able to like hear different perspectives.
Yeah. It is super interesting because I think that is probably like one of the big, how would you say, part of like big wins from this, like, actually being out here the entire summer. Like, genuinely. Yeah.
So cool.
Because
Cool. And this is the other thing too, like Dean had mentioned, he was so excited. Like, I didn't realize that he would be so pumped for me to be able to step into this, because literally on my end of things, I'm literally terrified. Like, I'm scared, literally like shaking in my boots. I don't know what other term would be better used to describe that. But also, like, because, okay, I don't know. Should I rewind a little bit? Because you don't know if
Sure,
you got the
yeah.
audio. But I just felt stuck. Like, I felt stuck. I graduated school and I started working at elementary school. I'm like, I did not go to school for those many years to end up at a minimum wage job that doesn't require a degree. Like, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do? Like, I was just kind of like regretting and like counting my missteps. And so, really, something that was eye opening for me was you can start where you are. Like, it doesn't matter what you don't know, just be willing to learn. And in this past week that I've tried to do that, like, I've stepped into things that I didn't think I could even do or I was even capable of. Like, the smallest wins, literally, like somebody reaching back out to me on LinkedIn. Like, I was
Oh yeah, those like I think that's more important context.
I was so excited. Like, that was like the first thing that I had done that I was like, whoa, like somebody in an established role. Like, she's literally the executive director of a nonprofit for disability, and intellectual disabilities organization in Utah. And they're pretty, they reach a lot of people. Like, they serve about 240 people. And I connected with her on LinkedIn. Like, she accepted my friend request. I don't know what the terms are for LinkedIn, but I reached out to her and she responded to me. She sent me her number and I texted her and I literally got on a call with her and talked to her about her journey and just like what she had learned. And like, we talked about any advice that she has for me as someone who's looking into going into this business. And that was like the first moment that I was like, whoa, like this can happen. Because Dean had been in my ear about getting on LinkedIn, and I just for so long was like, nah, I'm good. Like, it took me graduating from school and literally getting a job that I didn't need to get with a degree to realize that, you know, I need to try something new. I need to try something different.
I think it's also a helpful context because it's only literally within the past week.
Literally, like, last
Maybe
Friday.
two.
Today's Friday. This was last Friday. Well, yeah, I guess like week and a half.
But like
when I made the
where
realization.
like you started hopping on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I got
like,
on LinkedIn. I made a post that I
made
said.
a post.
I like put it in ChatGPT and Dino's like, did you put this in chat? I was like, I did. He's like, you know, make it human, make it personable. Like, people don't care about a robot. They want to see humans. And so I changed it to like my actual language. Like, I thought that that's the kind of language that people want to see on LinkedIn. And Dean was like, no, honestly, just be yourself. So I think that's like also the other lesson that I'm learning is like, just be yourself. Like, come with your own experiences and be genuine. And like, it's okay if you come from nothing. If you're starting at square one. Like, I'm literally 25 and I graduated from school. And like, I think that I'm supposed to be in this point in my life that I'm not in. And like, I was getting myself down on that, but like, I'm like excited. I'm like stepping into these new circles and learning new things. And so, and also like, I think the vision too is different for me. Like I was always like, I'm going to graduate school and like a job is going to land in my lap of success. And that doesn't happen. Like, you create success and you find it. It doesn't just happen for you. And just because you have a degree doesn't mean anything, honestly. Literally, it actually doesn't mean it. So if you think a degree is going to get you into doors, gain experience, because that's, if I would go back and give myself advice, it would be that, to gain experience. That's more valuable and like learn.
Yeah. So what was
Sorry,
your biggest takeaway from the night?
From tonight?
Yeah.
Well, I think I already mentioned it. Just like, there's no reason to be scared of doing things that you've never done before, and like stepping into the unknown, I guess. Also, like, literally consulting, strategy, like AI, coding, all of those things are things that I did not know about if you were to ask me 3 days ago. And like, I can sound like an expert. if I gonna talk to any of these other
You thought
polies,
my
like
MVP, bro. That's
I
how you
know,
know.
I know the big three, I know the big four, I know that they focus in tax and accounting, and so it's like,
Oh,
and it literally starts from that. Like you learn a little bit at a time. Like that's one thing that I guess like I just have been stuck because I didn't want to start the journey. Like, but nobody gets to where they are now without coming from nowhere and like without knowing nothing. And so just trying to be more open-minded about the world out there and like what I actually am capable of. And also like to not rush myself to know everything. Cause that's one thing like that I learned, especially going into this dinner. He like sent me these names and their LinkedIns and these things that I should research, but like it's okay if I don't have them memorized, and it's okay if I don't know everything that I'm talking about because it will come with time.
yeah. I think one of the interesting parts. So we went to this like Leland offsite, and on the way back, I think it's just like people that I work with. Just in talking with them, not to assume like their backgrounds or anything, but you could just tell like from the people I've talked with, like they just didn't have that same type of upbringing that I
As
did.
what?
Like the
Oh, as
upbringing
you.
of like not knowing
Yeah. Like literally not knowing. Like
nothing, like literally
I
nothing.
I legit am learning everything in like these
And
past
I
couple
was like
days.
literally in the same boat freshman year of college. Like I knew nothing. And
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
and so like on the way back, we we're having this dinner, having this little lunch, and the CEO, John, we start catching up, and he's asking me, he's like, because I keep talking about how our growth team, like they're so cracked, and he asked me, he's like, oh, like how about your siblings? Like, are your siblings cracked? I'm like, straight up, like no, like realistically, and it's no fault of theirs, because
It's just what we're
I would
surrounded
have
by,
exactly
honestly.
like I would have been in the same boat. But I just so happened to like get this one opportunity that just so happened to like point me in one direction with which like just so happened to land me at Leland or at like Northwestern where I could learn about these opportunities.
And I just want to pause him real quick. He went to this caddy program with our first cousin.
Yeah.
They like start at the same place, but they're in very different worlds right now.
Yeah.
And so Dean, he ended up at Northwestern, and our cousin, he's at UW. And like, we're all kind of in the same boat, me and all my cousins. Like, and honestly, like, even the people that I surround myself with, like, we're just not cracked. I'm saying that now, but I will get there.
Will be, yeah.
Yeah, just mark my words.
No, but genuinely, as I was explaining this to the CEO, I'm like, yeah, that's actually like one of the big things that I'm trying to do is like help my siblings, help my family open the eyes to like what is possible. Because even when I was in Hong Kong
And we got to do it ourselves. Like,
visiting those friends, like it was the same thing. Like they were asking me, oh yeah, like you're doing all these things. Like, what about your family? Like, don't you want to help them? I was like, yeah, exactly. And that's actually what I've been trying to do. So I'm actually super happy that this is really the first time where, like Lilia mentioned, like the first time where I'm bringing someone from my family into my world of like business and startups and tech and stuff.
and I will just say, like we are exposed to his world, like through his eyes, like, if that makes sense. Like, we see what he shows us and like what he exposes to us. And so like he's talked to me about LinkedIn for so long, probably the same as my other siblings and our other cousins. And like, we know that he's working at this startup. We know that he's doing these exciting things. Like, he shows up on these podcasts. He has this podcast. He like works with these other startups. So we're like, we know what like he's talking about, but it's different when you kind of like catch it for yourself and realize, you know what, like maybe he's onto something. And that's kind of like what it was for me. And so I'm at the very baby stages. I'm very baby stages. So like if Dean were to go into Northwestern as a freshman, that's like the point that I'm at right now. Like my first week at school. And honestly, it's an exciting time. It's like nerve-wracking and scary, but yeah, let's just say we want to be crap.
More to come. Let's freaking go. Awesome. Coming back from the interview, yeah, that was really, really cool. And I'm actually happy that I recorded that. Just to be able to look back on that moment years from now. So moving on to, I guess I'll go to the philosophizing section. These are just random things I've been thinking about. The first thing, and honestly, this is from like the past month, but I gave this talk, and in the LDS church, it's not like a pastor who prepares the entire week and prepares like this sermon. They just call up members from the congregation to go in and speak. And so I was called on to speak, and I was like up there, so I was preparing this thing, and I'll kind of share what I shared in the talk, or kind of the rundown. So I started off like introducing myself and explain how when I meet new people, usually the first question is like, oh, like, Dean, where do you go to school? What are you studying? And I explain, yeah, I'm a senior in Northwestern studying philosophy. When I say that, they kind of look at me weird and they're like, what philosophy? Like, what the heck is that? And it's interesting because I think the way I got into it was just because I loved being right, and I loved searching for wisdom, which is what philosophy is all about. And to explain this, try to think back to when you were a kid. You're a kid in elementary school, and the teacher, they asked a hard question. And when they asked this question, usually in every class, there was this know-it-all kid who would really just want to show off that they know the right answer. And they would raise their hand immediately, just like, oh yeah, look at me, I know the right answer. Well, that was me. I was that kid in elementary school that just wanted to show off. But I remember this specific moment where it was the same situation. The teacher asked this hard question, and we gave everyone time to think, but then immediately my hand shot up. I was so confident in my answer. And so the teacher calls on me, and I give this answer with all the confidence in the world. Then the teacher kind of pauses and looks at me and says, well, you're on the right track, but not quite there yet. Basically, just to say that I was wrong. And as a kid, like, that hurt so much to look dumb in front of all my friends and my classmates. And I hated that feeling so much that I stopped raising my hand. And I tell this story because that's exactly what I did with the gospel of Jesus Christ and God in general, because I didn't want to be wrong. And I was doing all this research. So for about 5 years, I would read books and articles and listen to podcasts and essays and videos and debates and all these different things. And so I learned so many things. I learned so many arguments and so many ways of thinking through religion. And at the end of the day, what I came to was that there are so many arguments and so many good arguments for two things that I think could really be true. First is atheism, so there's no God at all, or Christianity. And even within Christianity, like, I wasn't 100% sure like which denomination is true. And so I was so lost, and I didn't want to pick anything. So I decided to remain agnostic. I just would stop raising my hand. And there's a story from the New Testament that really hits home this lesson for me, this lesson of taking that step of faith. And it's in the middle of the night where all the disciples, they're in this boat, and it's kind of stormy, and they can't really see anything. But they go outside, and they see this figure kind of walking towards them, and they're like, oh, whoa, that must be a ghost. And this figure keeps walking towards them, like, wait a minute, that's Jesus. And so Peter shouts out to Jesus, like, Jesus, if that's you, help me come closer to you. And Jesus has come. And so Peter, he goes up to the edge of this boat, and at that moment, he has to make a decision. Is he going to play the safe route and just stay in this boat and not raise his hand? Or is he going to take that risk of stepping out of the boat onto the water and risk falling and drowning? Is he going to be the kid in the classroom who's too afraid of getting at what could be true and too afraid of looking dumb in front of his friends and classmates and not raise his hand? Or is he going to take that risk? Well, Peter, in this case, he chooses to take that step. He takes a step out of the boat onto the water. He takes another step and another step. But it turns out that he was actually wrong. He starts to lose focus on Jesus, and he starts to doubt himself, and then he starts to fall and sink. And one of the most powerful things that I have found in this whole faith journey is that as soon as he starts sinking, Jesus is right there to grab him and say, Peter, you're on the right track, but not quite there. Let me help you. Just in the same way as me, the little kid in the classroom, who raises my hand with all the confidence in the world and gives this answer that I wasn't 100% sure in, but I really believed in. And the teacher calls on me and I give this answer and I end up being wrong. The teacher, just like Jesus, is there to say, you're on the right track, but not quite there yet. Let me help you. And so that was kind of the gist of the talk that I gave. And honestly, man, like even re-explaining it now, it was a pretty powerful talk and a pretty powerful reminder, even to myself, of like, dang, he's always there. He's always there to help. And really just that idea of taking the step. But kind of on a very different, very, very different idea, but still kind of similar, is Tinder. So the reason I bring Tinder up is because it's kind of the same idea, where in both cases, in school, I was too afraid to raise my hand and give an answer because I didn't want to be wrong. Same thing with religion. I was too afraid to put my faith into atheism or Christianity or a God, like in general, because I didn't want to be wrong. And it's the same type of thing with Tinder, because one of the co-founders of Tinder, he's actually graduated from Northwestern, and so he held this little fireside chat, and so we asked him a ton of questions, and he kind of explained the origin story of Tinder. And if you kind of think about it, at least for me, like I immediately assumed like Tinder, all that's for is for getting laid. Like really that's all it's for. But he was explaining the initial insight that Tinder was made for. And it's a very similar situation where if I go and I walk into a bar and I see a girl, I'm like, oh my goodness, wait a minute, she's kind of cute. The biggest reason why I wouldn't want to approach her and talk to her is because I'm afraid of being rejected. I'm afraid of being wrong. And it kind of works vice versa. Like I walk into that same bar, the girl kind of looks at me and maybe she thinks like, oh, like, wait a minute, he's kind of cute. But she might be too afraid to come talk with me. Well, Tinder is this way of avoiding that piece, of avoiding rejection. Because what if there was a way to know for sure that I wouldn't get rejected off the bat? What if there was a way to know for sure that she actually likes me? And that's exactly what Tinder is. And that was the founding idea of Tinder. And I just thought that was an interesting connection, because I realized that connection after I reread one of the most life-changing philosophy lectures or essays or papers that has impacted my life the most, which is Will to Believe by William James. Definitely check it out, because it kind of touches on this idea, because there are some situations where we actually can make a decision or commit to an action even if the evidence isn't all the way there. So that was something I was kind of thinking about. And then the other thing is the fact that AI is king. And if you really think about it, like back in the days before we had the internet, the way everyone did their learning was through books. Like you'd go to the library, you find the books that you need, and then you read it and then find your answer. And then the internet came out, and then the internet introduced Google, and Google was revolutionary, because instead of having to go to the library and read all these books and find the answer, instead you just go to the internet, search up a question, and then there's all these different links that you could go through to help you find the answer. And then after the internet, there's this thing called AI that came out, and ChatGPT, like instead of having to go to the internet, search up an answer and then like comb through all these different websites and try to synthesize what the actual answer is, instead AI could do that all for you. Like you just ask it a question and it gives you a straight up answer. And the reason I say AI is king is because it's interesting. One of the best habits, I think, for me, the highest ROI habit that I've had, or that I would recommend to others, is turning to AI. Like instead of probably how our grandparents would usually do it, if they want to answer to their question, they would go immediately to the books, or even nowadays with my older siblings, like, or my parents, when they want an answer, they go immediately to Google. Instead, now I think one of the best habits to get into is going to AI, going to Chat GPT. And even in this example, when my sister, she kind of started to open her eyes, she wanted to lock in a little bit more, like get advice on her LinkedIn and her resume. When she would ask me questions, my first response to her was like, go ask Chat. Or like what did Chat have to say about this? And the reason I kept saying that was to help her get into the habit of turning to Chat. And it's kind of similar to, instead of like giving her the fish and giving her the answer, instead it's teaching her how to fish. Like, here's the best way to find the right answer. And it's Chat GPT, bro. So that was something I've been thinking about. But moving on to the weekly roundup. These are random finds since the last episode. It could be a question, a book, a quote, anything that really stuck with me. And the first thing is from the SF trip. And it was when I was trying to think through that talk that I just walked through again. And the quote is this: some questions are worth being wrong for. And obviously this is in the context of school. And when the teacher is asking this question and I'm raising my hand, it's just simply true that some questions, like this question of God, it's worth being wrong for. And that's not to say like, oh, like even if it's wrong, I should still believe in it. But it is to say that even if you could be wrong, it's worth taking a crack at it. And that's what I think is super true. So that's one thing. And then a question that came up, this is on my Hong Kong trip, which actually like kind of made me take a step back. And the question is, would you take a bullet for God? Which is basically just to say, like, would you die for your belief in God? And I think my original gut reaction was like, yes, like I want to, but like realistically, no. Like as of right, like even right now, as I'm explaining all of this, and like what I just walked through with Jesus and Peter walking on water, and he was there to help. Like even with all of that, like I still don't think today I would take a bullet for God. Like I don't think my relationship with him is like there yet, which is actually what I want to work toward. Like the first step is this, probably where I'm at right now, where like I'm willing to take that step, but eventually, or hopefully this like initial kernel of starting to build the habits of prayer and scriptures and all these things will actually lead into a relationship with God, which I do not have. And so that's something that I actually really want to like build eventually, but that's like quite frankly where I stand right now. And then a podcast that I thought was interesting was Alex O'Connor. He's like probably my favorite agnostic YouTuber, which is a very niche category, but I think it really stands. Maybe my favorite philosophy YouTuber, because I actually really enjoy his takes and his insights on things, because he's one of those people that actually genuinely seems to be seeking truth. Whereas some people, their reputation is too wrapped in a certain belief system, where if they go out of bounds of that belief system, then it kind of like impacts their reputation. A great example of this would be like a professor at BYU. Like a professor at BYU is kind of iffy to get their takes on things, because their job is quite literally tied to their belief in the LDS church, which some people might disagree with, but I think for the most part it's true. Like if you become anti, I don't think they would keep you at BYU, or maybe they would. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but and that's my understanding. But that's just to give like an example. Like if someone's entire brand and reputation was built on the fact that they're a Christian, but all of a sudden they like switch up and they're not Christian anymore, but switching up would mean that they lose all these followers and all this money, then it's like I'm more hesitant to believe or listen to what they say. The book that I started reading but didn't end up finishing is called Die with Zero. This one was interesting because it really got me thinking about my relationship with money. And this was again on the Hong Kong trip, where a friend asked me, she was like, what's the point of making all this money if you don't want to spend it? Because I was basically bragging about how frugal I am. Like I really don't like spending money. And she asked me this question, I was like, well, what's the point of making money if you're not going to spend it? I was like, huh. You have a great point there. And it kind of just took me back and made me think about my relationship with money. And I think on the spectrum of being like an outrageous spender versus being a complete hoarder, I'm definitely a lot closer to being a hoarder. So although I disagree with the book and like the big lesson that it advocates for, I think it's helpful to see the other side of it because it helps you find that balance. Like I'm on one side of like being a lot closer to a complete hoarder than an outrageous spender. And so to see kind of a take of being an outrageous spender was helpful. But probably my biggest disagreement with this book is just the fact that it seems to divorce work from enjoyment. Like it seems to have this implicit assumption that work is not enjoyable or work doesn't bring some type of purpose, which I just disagree with. But on the flip side, like I do see where the book is coming from in the sense of like if you spend your whole life working and making money, but you don't actually end up using that money for anything, then like what's the point of making that money? So that part I would agree with. But the final thing for this section of the pod is the article Amp It Up. But also there's a book by the same CEO. The CEO was like super cracked. I think he took 3 companies IPO'd, something insane, but he's like super cracked CEO that wrote this book. And this was what the Leland offsite was based around. It was based around like the teachings from this book. Honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan of the book or the article. I didn't think it had anything that was like super insightful, but it was interesting to see the way they tied this in for the offsite. And finally, the final section of this podcast is the life update. These are the 4 most important areas of my life: my God, myself, my people, and my work, in that order. So let's start from the top with my God. I kind of explained the gist of it with where I'm standing with God and like making progress, but I would say I definitely want to keep building that habit more and just try to remember God more. Like that's probably the biggest thing, is building that habit again. And I'm actually rereading Atomic Habits just because I think it's a helpful book to come back to and remind myself of the things that I learned, but also to re-implement some of those lessons. Because it's great to like having read it and everything, but it's worth nothing if I don't actually put it to action. So I'm rereading that and putting it to action, which kind of connects to the update on myself. I'm trying to get back into the gym more and just overall health and fitness. Since I came back from Utah, my commute time has drastically decreased, but I still have to do a ton of school stuff. So that gets into a couple hours of the week. But honestly, yeah, biggest things are building habits to build my relationship with God. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is building habits for my physical health, for sure. And then in terms of mental health, I think honestly is like pretty great. And sleep is good. Honestly, feeling pretty healthy right now. That's pretty awesome. Moving on to update on my people. I think the biggest thing is I'm really, really happy actually that I was able to bring my sister into my world. Not to like surprise, like, oh, like I brought her into my world, but just to be someone who was able to like open someone else's eyes. Because honestly, the person who did that for me was like a mentor of mine. I call him a mentor. He wasn't like an official mentor, but he kind of opened my eyes to the different career paths that I had with like this 2 hours of tearing apart my resume that he did completely free. And then after that, he like took me out to lunch and then explained to me all the career paths. Like he taught me a lot about this whole game. And so I'm just happy that I could pass it on to my sister, which is really, really awesome. And then also being able to hang out with friends that I have out here in Northwestern. That's always a vibe. Unfortunately, with school and everything, like I don't have too much time on my hands, but I do have some time to hang out with the boys. And finally, update on my work. This is probably the biggest thing. So came back from Utah on Sunday, and it is currently Wednesday. And these first couple days have been tough, bro. Like absolutely tough. I think I've been working probably easily 10 to 12-hour days, and I still feel so behind on stuff because the way I've set up my schedule is Monday, Wednesdays, I have 7.5 hours straight of class. And so by the time I finish up class, my brain is already kind of like fried because during class, I'm just like knocking out all of these like random tasks that I can knock out for work. Like I'm doing like responding to Slack messages and like doing all these HubSpot things. And so my brain is kind of fried from multitasking so much between like trying to participate in class and like semi pay attention, but also trying to finish up work and do some tasks there. And so after those 7.5 hours, my brain is already like kind of fried, so it can't really like lock in on things. And also, I'm starving by the end of it because I don't eat that entire day. So I'll just call it intermittent fasting, but that has kind of been difficult. And then even on the Tuesday where I literally had the whole day to work, worked, I kid you not, 12 hours, bro. And I still felt so behind. But honestly, I think a big reason for that is because I'm just doing all this context switching. Like in terms of hourly time, like it's a ton of time, but in terms of the actual work I get done, like it's not that much. And so I will want to get better at being more efficient with that time, like really locking in on a project and getting that done. So that's one thing I want to get better at doing, which is kind of what I'm doing now, like trying to lock in, finish this pod because I've put it off way, way, way too long. And I really want to get it out there so I can record the next one, which honestly at this point will probably be my birthday one, which is next week. Oh my goodness, that's a week from today. That is crazy. The big 2-1. Well, on that note, I'll see you at the birthday pod. I record these episodes completely free to share success with everyone. So the only thing I ask is that if you learned anything or found something interesting in this episode, just leave a review and share it with a friend. Only takes 5 seconds and it would mean the world. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tatok, see you.